All right, for today's video, we're going to be graphing piecewise functions. And when you guys graph these, you're going to need a pencil because we are going to be drawing and erasing to do this. So make sure you grab a pencil, make sure your pencil has an eraser so that you can do that. So go ahead and pause, take a minute, get your pencils ready. All right, so piecewise functions are just functions where you have one piece of the graph is one function, one piece of the graph is another function. So if you look at this first function, we have that the first piece is a straight line, y equals mx plus b. And then the second piece of the graph is a quadratic function. So we recognize that because it has the exponent of 2. So for the first piece of the graph, y equals mx plus b, I know that the slope, there's no number in the front, so I know the slope is actually a 1. And I'm going to go ahead and make that whole number 1 a fraction by writing 1 over 1. And it's okay if you want to use Desmos to graph those in case you're brain farting with some of those, but 1 over 1x plus 2 is how you graph, how you write the equation of that straight line. And then if you guys recall, the 2 is the y-intercept. And then from there, we do a slope of 1. So up 1, right 1, up 1, right 1. Remember, if this is a positive slope, then we always go up. And the bottom always tells us to go to the right unless we have run out of space. That's the only time we go to the left is if we've run out of space. So up to the right. And I'm going to draw this kind of lightly because I'm actually about to erase half of this. So there's my straight line graph. And once you have that, what you're going to do is you're going to look at this other part of the piecewise function because it's going to tell you what part of the graph you're allowed to use that piece for. So the graph says you're going to use the straight line if the x value is less than, which is to the left of, if the x value is to the left of 3. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find the x value of 3. Here's the x value of 3. I'm going to go up here and I'm going to circle it. And it says if x is less than 3, all the values that are less than 3 are actually to the left of 3. So I'm going to make this part dark. This is the part I'm going to keep. And then everything else is going to get erased. That's all gone. Okay. Now you can see this part right here says less than, this says greater than or equal to. So less than is just a circle, greater than or equal to is a circle that is filled in. You can equal that point. This means you cannot equal that point. All right, so that's something to pay attention to as we do the rest of the problems. Now, I'm going to use Desmos to do the quadratic function. We do know that this quadratic function has a vertex and that the vertex is +3, +1. So that's going to be helpful. I'm going to look for that on my table when I'm graphing this. And I can go ahead and even graph this right now. +3, +1 is right there. So now I'm going to graph this on Desmos. So I've got x minus 3 squared plus 1. And if you don't have your Chromebooks out already, you're going to need to get them out because you're going to be doing lots of graphing on Desmos today to get points for your graph. So when we graph this on Desmos, we want to make sure that we can get lots of points. We are not getting points to graph by holding down our finger on this. We're not getting points just by clicking on one of them. We're not getting points by finding the one y-intercept. That's not how we're doing it. To get points for our graph, we're going to come over here to the gear. We're going to click on that. We're going to click on Create Table. And we want to see all these values right here. And what I want you to do is I want you to look for the locator point or look for the vertex on the table. So 3, 1 is the point that I want to see on the table. And I want to find points to the left and to the right of that vertex on the table. So if you want to make the table bigger, you have 2 ways to make it bigger. You have the negative side. So I'm going to put my cursor right after the -2. I'm going to click right here and press enter a bunch of times. And the negative side is kind of annoying because then you have to type in those negative numbers. And as you can see, these numbers are just way too big. We're not going to be able to graph those, but I wanted you guys to see how that works. And then the positive side is great because all you have to do is put your cursor after the 2, and as you press enter, all the numbers show up for you and you don't even have to type them in. They just show up. Okay, so now I've got 3, 1, and then I've got the points on either side, and now I've got all the points that I can graph. So 3, 1, 2, 2, 4, 2, 1, 5, 5, 5. So I've got those points that I should be graphing. The graph looks like this, and I'm doing it kind of lightly. Okay, now this says to find where x is 3. We're going to circle where x is 3 right here. This says to fill it in, so I'm going to fill in that circle where x is 3. And it says keep everything where x is greater than 3, which is to the right. I can see this arrow is pointing to the right. So keep everything where x is greater than 3, which is to the right of 3. So I'm going to keep this part of the graph. I'm going to erase the left side of the graph. And now I'm done. Okay. Number 2 says the graph is 1, f of x equals 1 or y equals 1 if x is less than -2. So I can go to Desmos if I don't remember what those graphs look like. And graph, I think you can actually type f of x in here. F of x equals 1. Yep, you sure can. F of x equals 1 is a horizontal line at 1. So I can just graph that whole horizontal line. So there's my horizontal line. I'm going to find the x value of -2 and draw a circle. This says less than or equal to. Since I can equal to, I'm going to fill that circle in. And it says it's less than -2, which is to the left. I can see the arrow pointing to the left. So I'm going to make this part dark. This is what I'm going to keep. And then everything else gets erased. Okay, now for the other graph, I have an absolute value graph, -2, x minus 1. There's no number on the end, so that would be like having a +0 on the end. And that means that the vertex is +1, 0. So I'm going to go ahead and graph this in Desmos. And then I'm going to make sure that when I pull this up on Desmos that I look for that vertex in Desmos. So I'm going to click on the gear, and then I'm going to click on the list, and then what was it? +1, 0. There's the vertex right there. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. Might give myself some negative values as well. Not a ton. I don't need to make a bunch every time. I just need to have enough that I can really graph all of those points. So I'm going to start in the very middle at +1, 0. And then I'm going to do points on either side. So 0, -2, 2, -2. And I guess I could click these so you can actually see it. So I've got those points, graphing these. And I just like, I like to do enough points that I can kind of fill up the graph that I have space for. So I'll probably go that big, to be honest. That's quite a few points though. Okay, so -1, -4, -2, -6, -3, -8, 0, -2, 1, 0, 3, -4, 4, -6, 5, -8. I'm drawing these in kind of lightly. Okay, and then this is telling me to circle the graph at -2, an x value of -2. I am not going to fill it in because this does not say equal. And then this is pointing to the right, so I'm going to keep the right side. And then everything to the left gets erased. Okay, let's go ahead and do the next one. So we have a square root graph. The square root graph has a locator point at -6, -1. So I'm going to go to Desmos. If I want to go back to the normal screen, I just hit the home button. To type a square root, I type SQRT. X plus 6, get out of that. So I'm going to press the right arrow to get out of that. And then I'm going to type the -1. And now I want to get my point. So I'm going to click on the gear. I'm going to click on the table, and I want -6, -1 on the table. You can see that the table is only giving me these points over here, and I want -6, -1. So I'm going to go put my cursor after the -2 and press enter a bunch of times so that I can get to -6. And you can see when I get to -7, it's undefined because you can't take the square root of -7 plus 6. -7 plus 6 is -1. The square root of -1 is undefined. Okay, so we've got all these points. There's our locator point. Now we got that one. I'm not going to graph that one. I'm not going to graph that one either. That one's good to graph. No, thank you. No, thank you. No, thank you. Looks like we're close to another whole number though, so let's get... Okay. So I'm going to graph my whole numbers. Those are the ones I'm going to graph. So -6, -1, -5, 0, -2, 1, and 3, 2. Okay. So I've got all those graphed. Now I'm going to look back at my paper. I'm going to lightly trace this. Okay. Now you always want to make sure that when you graph your points, if this is at 0, make sure you've got points that are on either side of that so that you can draw your circle and actually have something to erase. So every so often, I think there might be one exception where you can't erase anything, but for the most part, it's always going to work. Okay, so for this one, I'm going to go ahead and circle where X is 0, which is right here at a decimal, but I'm okay with that. That's fine. And it says, based on this sign, we're not going to fill it in because it does not say equal to. Then the arrow's pointing to the left, so I'm going to keep the left side. And I'm going to erase the right side. Now you'll notice as I've drawn each of these, I'm not sketching these out. I'm drawing points. I'm taking points off the table. My pictures are pretty accurate because I'm taking points off the table every time. So make sure that you're always doing that. If these look like you have sketched them, like you just eyeballed it and you did not pull up a table and you did not take points, I will not give you credit for this assignment if you are not actually getting points off the table to do this. These should not be eyeball sketches. They should be actual points if you want to earn credit for the assignment. This one right here is y equals mx plus b. So I know how to graph that by hand. So I'm going to go ahead and do that one myself. So this one says a y-intercept of -5. And then it says a slope of 1/2. So rise 1, run 2. So up 1 to the right 2, up 1 to the right 2, up 1 to the right 2. And then I ran out of room. So I'm going to go the opposite way. So I'm going to go down 1, left 2, down 1, left 2, down 1, left 2. And Desmos is capable of doing that as well. So if you weren't comfortable graphing that by hand, or you're brain farting or something, you can always type in 1 divided by 2, put the x next to it, -5, and do the same thing. So click on the gear, click on the table, you're going to have all those table values, and you can do the same thing, get some more values here, get some more values here, if you need to. Sorry about the bell. My bad, my bad. Okay. So if you needed to, you could always use the table to get points for that. Okay, so there's my graph. I'm gonna circle 0 right here. It has an equal to, so I'm gonna fill it in. And then the arrow is pointing to the right. So I'm gonna go to the right. And then I'm gonna erase everything to the left. Okay. All right, this one says -5. So if we remember, just like this one up here said 1, if it has just a plain number, that means that it's a horizontal line. But if you forget, you can always type it in. I don't know if Desmos does g of x. Let's check. I know it does f of x. Let's see if it does g of x. G of x equals -5. Yes, it does. Okay, so horizontal line at -5. So I'm going to go ahead and draw that in right down here. And then we're going to circle 4, circle the x value of 4. This tells us to fill it in. Okay, and then it says keep everything to the left. And that means we're going to erase everything to the right. Okay, now this next graph is a cubic graph with a locator point of +5, -2. So to the right 5, down 2. So I'm going to graph that cubic graph, right 5, down 2. 1/2 x -5 to the third -2. Okay, and now I need to get my points. So I'm going to click on the gear. I'm going to click on the table. 5, 2 is the locator point that I'm looking for. Sorry, 5, -2 is the locator point I'm looking for. So up here, there's my locator point. Now a lot of these are not graphable, but I can definitely get these right here. Can get this one, that one, and that's about it. So I'm going to graph the locator point and those decimals to the left and right, just because they're not too bad. So 6, -1.5, 4, -2.5, 3, -6, 7, 2. Gonna go ahead and lightly sketch that graph. And these graphs, as I've been grading papers, have not looked quite like they do on Desmos. So make sure you keep Desmos pulled up and that you're sketching this to look like that Desmos graph. So we've kind of got this like half a U going up, half a U going down. So I'm gonna look for the 4. I'm gonna circle the 4. And this says to keep everything to the right. Don't fill in the circle and keep everything to the right. There we go. Then erase this stuff. Okay. Here we've got y equals mx plus b. So I'm going to start with my y-intercept of 3. And then my slope says go down 1 and to the right 2. So down 1, right 2, down 1, right 2, down 1, right 2, down 1, right 2. I ran out of room, so I'm going to go to the left now. Up 1, left 2. And it's telling me to draw my circle at -2. And this says it does not have an equal sign, so it says do not fill in your circle. The arrow's pointing to the left, so I'm going to keep the left. And I'm going to erase the right. Okay. Whenever we have a single number like that, that means that we just have a perfect horizontal line at that number. So this is going to be -2. Okay, I'm going to circle the x value of -2. The equal to tells me, the equal to right here tells me to fill it in. The arrow's pointing to the right, so this is the part I'm going to be keeping. And I'm going to erase the left side. Okay, last one. We have a cube root. So I can see that my cube root has a locator point of -4, -1. Left 4, down 1. So I'm definitely going to be looking for that on the table. So let's type this into Desmos. So I've got -2 in the front. Then I'm going to type cube root CBRT. X plus 4. I'm going to hit the right arrow to get out of this radical. Now I've got a -1. And I'm going to click on the gear and then click on the table. Lots of decimals there. So remember, I'm looking for -4, -1. That's the locator point. So I'm going to click after the -2 and press enter a bunch of times. -2, -3, -4. So we're getting some points that we can actually graph. And then we're getting some decimals again. Okay, so I can for sure graph those 3. Are there any over here I can graph? Oh, there's one. Nah, okay. So any over here, maybe a couple more. -7, -8, -9. Nah, okay. So I can graph -5 was one. This one, this one, this one, and then 4. 4 was the other one. This one. Okay. So I can only graph a few of the points, but it's not terrible. So I'm going to graph -5, +1, -4, -1, -3, -3, and then +4, -5. Okay. So I have those graphed over here, and then make sure that when you draw this sketch that you're looking at Desmos so that it looks correct. Because these have been some funky looking graphs as they've gotten turned in. So something like that. Okay. Now it says here, this is to the left of -1. So I'm going to circle it at -1. Oops, somewhere right in there. Do not fill in the circle and make the part to the left of the circle darker. Okay. And then everything to the right of the circle needs to be erased. Okay. Then this part is y equals mx plus b. So that's a 1 there. I'm going to make it a fraction. So it has a y-intercept of -6. And then it goes up 1, right 1, up 1, right 1, up 1, right 1. So I'm going to do that slope. And then I ran out of space, so I'll go backwards. Okay. And we're going to circle the graph at -1. And it says equal to, so we're going to fill in that circle. And the arrow is pointing to the right, so we're going to keep the right side. And erase the left. And there we go. Ta-da!